For transparency's sake, this video is only possible due to a review copy provided by Paizo Entertainment. Regardless, all opinions are my own, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hey, what's up? It's me, Lex, back at you with another Pathfinder video. Today I have a preview of the Animist class that's releasing alongside War of Immortals, or well, in the book, in just a couple of weeks here. I have everything laid out on this screen in front of me, and I also have a sort of example character, not a fully built character, implemented into Foundry Virtual Tabletop. I'm going to go over things in categories. So, kicking off, I'm going to look over just its default stats, and I also just want to read out its flavor because I'm very interested in this class. I had a lot of fun reading over it, thinking about potential character designs, especially the adventure path that's just coming out. Triumph of the Tusk, I think, is a really good way to frame some Animist things, so I might use it as an example. Anyway. The Animist. You are the interlocutor between the seen and unseen, the voice that connects the mortal and the spiritual. You bond with spirits, manifesting their distinct magic and allowing their knowledge to flow through you. You may favor apparitions that grant you healing magic, others that grant you spells of destructive power, or pick and choose between different apparitions as your environment and circumstances demand. You may consider your powers part of a sacred trust, or see your unique abilities as a sign that you've been chosen as a champion of two worlds, whether you advocate for mortals in the planes beyond, or whether you represent the spirit's interests. You provide the bridge between realms. I won't be reading out every ability verbatim, especially over here where we have this big category of spellcasting features, but I just figured that it was kind of important to get across the default flavor that they have for Animist, although I think there's quite a lot you can do with it. Animist is a spellcasting class. It's a wisdom key attribute. It has 8 hit points. Its saving throws are only trained in fortitude and reflex, but an expert in will. Also only trained in perception, but the being high in wisdom is going to make up for that. You get very few skills as an Animist. You're trained in your choice of either nature or occultism. All Animists are trained in religion. And then you get 2 extra skills plus your intelligence modifier. For reference, a barbarian gets, I believe, athletics, maybe intimidation, or maybe just the athletics, but then 3 plus your intelligence modifier. But we'll touch on why their trained skills are so few in just a second. As a normal caster, you're only trained in simple weapons and unarmed attacks, and that improves to expert proficiency at level 11. Your defenses are actually quite solid. You have light armor, medium armor, and unarmored defense, and that improves at level 11 to expert proficiency, which is super solid, especially for a caster. This is something more similar to a druid. Since you can wear medium armor, you can go a little lower on your dexterity score, and you can buff up something like strength if you want to get into melee, constitution if you just want to survive a little longer, or toss it into something else like intelligence or charisma to be the face, or more skill focused in your class. Your spell proficiency as a full spellcaster is the same as all the other ones. You get expert at 7th level, master at 15th, and legendary at 19th. As for when your saves improve, they're not great. Worse than a cleric even. But your fortitude improves to expert at level 3, which is decent. That'll help shore up some more physical effects. Your perception hits expert at level 9. At level 11, when you improve your light armor and medium armor and unarmored defense to expert, you get your reflex saves up as well. And then at level 13, you get to improve your will save proficiency to master. And as is normal when you get master proficiency in a save, it bumps successes to critical successes. Next up, I want to go straight over to, let's say their main feature, the Apparition Attunement. And we'll touch on this a little bit more in depth in a moment, but the idea is there is this list over here that we'll go over of 11 different apparitions. You are able to, at daily preparations, choose 2 of them to be your attuned apparitions for the rest of the day. They grant you a bunch of features, and you can have one of them as your primary, which gives you even more features. And then at level 7, you get a 3rd one, and at level 15, you get a 4th. We'll get into that a little bit later, but first we're going to carry that over to the spellcasting. That was just necessary background information. Animist Spellcasting is very interesting. You are always a divine spellcaster. You count as a prepared spellcaster, even though some of your casting is spontaneous. You yourself are prepared. This table right here is the number of spells you get per day. And the number on the left is how many prepared spells you get. The number on the right is how many spontaneous spell slots you get. And so you'll see that for most of the levels, you're going to have more more prepared spell slots than you will have prepared on the right here. There is this jump at level 10. I tried to find out why this exists here, why the spontaneous spell slots improve at level 10. There's no feature, as far as I'm able to tell, that actually explains why, and the spellcasting features also only just say the number of spells that you can prepare are just listed in the table. So I'm not sure why this is. It's likely a balance consideration, though it does feel very strange to have spell levels alternate between, when you go from 2nd to 3rd level, you're gaining 2 spell slots, and then from 3rd to 4th, you're gaining a single spell slot. But then when you go from 9th to 10th rank, you're gaining 4 spell slots, because you're gaining these 3 back here and another one up here. And that's just very strange to see. As for how these spell slots work, your prepared spell slots are as normal. It's like a cleric. You get to prepare from any common spells on the divine spell list or other divine spells you have access to or have learned via Learn a Spell every morning into your prepared spell slots, and you can cast them as normal. Your apparition spell casting, and this is the interesting bit, every apparition out of the 11 has a list of apparition spells, as you can see here with Lurker and Devouring Dark. There's a cantrip and then 1st through 9th. You add every single one of the spells on every apparition you're attuned to's list to your spell repertoire, and then you can cast them with any of your spontaneous spell slots, so any of the ones on the right here. And additionally, all of your apparition spells are signature spells, and so you can cast any of them out of any slot that they can be cast out of. So if I have a super solid 1st rank spell, I can cast it with all of these 1st rank slots, or all of these spontaneous slots here on the right, which is super solid, and you'll see that when we get to the Foundry example I have set up a little closer. And then finally, when you make your daily preparations and attune to your apparitions, as well as whenever you refocus, you're able to select one of your apparitions to be your primary apparition. That primary apparition grants you its Vessel spell, which is a focus spell that's meant to be you kind of either embodying or connecting directly to that spirit. And that's the only one that you know out of the only focus spell, the only Vessel spell that you know out of all of them from your attuned apparitions. And so there's this interesting thing we'll get into here as we move into apparitions, where every apparition gives you 2 trained lores, and those lores automatically improve at 8th level and 16th level to expert and master proficiency respectively. Your apparition spell repertoire, as I mentioned before, you just have to be attuned again to get these benefits. You just have all of these spells. Your Vessel spell, only your primary apparition gives you a Vessel spell. So if I had Echo of Lost Moments and Crafter in the Vault as my 2 attuned apparitions, but Echo of Lost Moments was my primary, I would only have the Store Time Vessel spell and not Traveling Workshop. And finally, each apparition has listed statistics for the Avatar spell, because at level 19, you gain a 10th rank apparition spell slot, which you can use to cast heightened versions of your apparition spells, and also Avatar, which transforms you into the apparition of your primary apparition, their Avatar form. As for how to get more focus points, since there is no way for every animist to become attuned or primarily attuned to multiple apparitions, at 7th level, when you gain your 3rd apparition, you increase the number of focus points in your pool by 1. And then you do that again at level 15 when you get your 4th apparition. And so that'll be when you get your 3rd focus point. And so you kind of start stacking up focus points as you go, but as far as I could tell, there are no feats that grant you focus spells, which means that this will have to be how you get your focus points. Now I think it would be very fitting to get into the apparitions real quick, and also show off the example I have in Foundry to show what it looks like. So Lurker in Devouring Dark is one of the apparitions I have on the Foundry. These are found near old shipwrecks, deadly icebergs, and other places where ice and deep water are most prevalent. And they can also be attuned to the Dark Tapestry, which gives Dark Tapestry lore instead of Sailing lore, and changes the ice and water spells to deal void damage. It has these apparition spells, Caustic Blast, Grim Tendrils, a lot of tentacle and water and ice stuff, ocean lore and sailing lore. The Devouring Dark form, which is a morph spell that eventually allows you to turn into a shark or a elemental, a water elemental. And then its Avatar form is good at swimming. So this is kind of like an ocean-based apparition. Down here we have Stalker in Darkened Boughs. They make their homes in ancient forests and jungles, other places unfriendly to humanoids, and others who would exert control over nature's designs. They're drawn to animists who have violent thoughts or impulses, but linger with ones who quell their hatred the best. They're moody, impulsive, and see things poorly. You gain forest lore and hunting lore. All of these spells, which are themed around kind of nature, runic bodies in their Vomit Swarm, Moon Frenzy. If they're your primary, you gain Darkened Forest form, which is a focus spell that allows you to change into pest form, animal form, or elemental form. And then their Avatar allows you to run around or fly with Devouring Jaws. And then the last one that I'm going to be showing off in specific is Vanguard of Roaring Waters. This one is found where rivers carve their way through mountains and create rapids, or near bays where rivers meet the sea, and turbulent breakers and unpredictable undertows, coastal reefs that tear the bottoms off of ships, basically all sorts of dangerous water. You gain mountain lore and river lore, these apparition spells, which are all about water, and that's really it, all about water. You gain the River Carving Mountains Vessel spell, which is about kind of protecting yourself and riding the wave. And then you gain the Avatar of River That Splits the World, which gives you the ability to swim and walk, part mountains, and crash into the sea. All of the vessel spells, generally speaking, are single action abilities that are then sustained up to a minute, and they usually get continual effects as you sustain them. By the way, so for example, down here with Nymph's Grace, it's a 10-foot aura, sustained up to a minute. The first time an enemy enters the aura each round or starts their turn in it, they make a will save or become confused, and they can never harm you while confused in this way. Now, I do want to show off the Animist that I kind of tossed together in my Foundry here. And as always, the link will be down below to Milby's maps for creating this map. Even though I'm not really using it, it's just a very pleasant map. I like to use it as a backdrop. I've wanted to show off how a level 9 Animist would look, because at level 10, they get that large bonus to the amount of spell slots they had, so I wanted to demonstrate what it would look like before then, just to not set expectations too high. This focus pool here, despite having 3 focus spells listed, only one of them would actually be able to be used. It would be whichever primary apparition this Animist had. So in this case, if they were primarily attuned to Lurker and Devouring Dark, then they could only use Devouring Forest form, and that's the only one that will be providing them with a focus point as well, because that's these are just listed for convenience. You wouldn't actually have the other 2 at all. Lurker and Devouring Dark. Oh, this is meant to be Devouring Dark form. Alright. You wouldn't have the other focus spells while you were not attuned to the other creatures, or apparitions. But down here you can see a very simple layout for prepared spells. I set up the 2 cantrips you get to choose, the 2 spells at each rank. I just tossed in some heals, Roaring Applause, Summon Celestial. This is Divine Prepared Spellcasting, you know how it works. But then down here in your spontaneous spells, because this Example Animist is level 9 and has the 3rd apparition feature, they have 3 attuned apparitions, and those are the 3 that I went over just a moment ago: the Lurker in Devouring Dark, Stalker in Darkened Boughs, and Vanguard of Roaring Waters. And so this spontaneous spell list has every single one of their spells on here, and all of them are signature. And if we scroll all the way down here to 5th rank, you can see only halfway through the total number of ranks that a spellcaster gains access to. This is an immense amount of versatility. And though while it is lacking in versatility in being able to select what spells necessarily you have, because they're all granted spell lists, this is an immense amount of versatility in the moment. If you wanted to cast any of these spells, you could at any rank that they can be cast. The only downside is that you only have the 1 casting out of any rank. If this Example Animist were to cast a 3rd rank Hydraulic Push, no more 3rd rank slot for the rest of the day. And additionally, over here in the proficiencies section, being attuned to these 3 spirits gives you these 6 lore skills, And I wanted to bring over a reminder just because I think that a lot of people could benefit from internalizing this a little more, whether you're a GM or a player. Lores are very effective, and particularly when they're appropriate to the situation, which I'll get into in a moment here. Lore can be substituted for any check that it can reasonably apply to at GM discretion, which means that the Animist, with access to forest lore, hunting lore, mountain lore, ocean lore, river lore, and sailing lore, all of them scaling up to expert automatically because they are level 8. I would say they might even be able to just entirely forego survival and maybe a not insignificant amount of nature proficiency as well. It provides a lot of versatility, and especially because every morning you can change out your apparitions. So if you were heading into, let's say, somewhere where heraldry lore or battlegrounds lore, a war zone, or even an ancient ruin for the heraldry lore, you might switch to attuning to a witness to ancient battles. If you were heading into kind of a regal location, you might switch to Monarch of the Fey Courts and gain Art and Fey. If you were to head out into Alkenstar, you might switch over to Crafter in the Vault and gain Architecture and Engineering lore. There's a lot of versatility in these skills, and your ability to use them is very heightened, and I think that especially because you have good defenses with the medium armor proficiency, being able to boost up your intelligence score to take even better advantage of these lore skills is very, very strong, and something that shouldn't be overlooked as a base part of the class. And I'm finally here, well, not finally, but for the main part of the class, finally, I want to touch on the 4 subclasses of Animist. There's the Liturgist, who is all about bringing forth spirits through song and dance and connecting spiritual to physical. At first level, you get the Song of Invocation, which gives you the Circle of Spirits feat. Circle of Spirits is, as an action once a round, you can choose a different apparition you're attuned to and make it your primary apparition. It also makes it so that the number of focus points in your focus pool is equal to the number of focus spells you have, or the number of apparitions you are attuned to, whichever is higher. And this means that a Liturgist at level 1 has 2 focus spells, because you begin with 2 attuned apparitions. And then at 7th level, when you start attuning to 3 apparitions every morning, and everyone else is gaining their 2nd focus point, you get your 3rd focus point. This is already, just from level 1, very interesting, being able to switch between whichever of the focus spells is most applicable to you, and having just more focus points to be able to utilize them. And then we move on to level 9. Every subclass has a feature at 1st, 9th, and 17th level. At level 9th, you get Dancing Invocation. Whenever you leap, step, or tumble through, which can just be basically a stride, as tumble through does not require you to pass through a creature, you also sustain an apparition spell or vessel spell. This is super helpful. Being able to have the action compression as a Liturgist for something like the Embodiment of Battle here, which gives you a bonus to attack and damage rolls made with weapons and unarmed attacks. This normally would be eating an action every round that you would otherwise want to be spending on probably moving, and so the Liturgist being able to sustain that spell as they leap, step, or tumble through, moving around at even their full speed, is very, very strong. And then at level 17, when you roll initiative, you can use Circle of Spirits as a free action, allowing you to attune to a apparition of your choice. And then if your first action on your first turn is to cast an apparition cantrip granted by your primary apparition, you reduce the number of actions it takes to cast it by 1, which means that for your first action on your first turn, rolling initiative, you could switch to, say, Vanguard of Roaring Waters. And then as your first action on your first turn, you could cast Rousing Splash to give yourself some temporary hit points, or someone else some temporary hit points, for half its normal action cost. A lot of fun. The Liturgist is very effective at making you feel, it seems, like you're able to move around and have a lot of flexibility in what you do with the spirits that you have. Next up is the Medium, who is particularly good at acting as a conduit for spiritual energy, and they tend to associate with a wide array of apparitions rather than attuning with a single one, or a small group. At level 1, you gain the Invocation of Unity, which gives you the Relinquish Control feat. As a free action when your turn begins, you give over your body to your primary apparition. Until the start of your next turn, you get a +4 status bonus on saves against spells and effects that give you the controlled condition, or attempt to influence your actions, like Charm, Command, Haunting, Melody, etc. But the only actions you can take are to recall knowledge, step, strike, cast an apparition spell, and those are your spontaneous spells. Cast a vessel spell, which is your focus spells, sustain a vessel spell, or use an action that has the apparition trait, and those are mostly feats. You gain a +2 circumstance bonus on all recall knowledge checks made using lore skills granted by your attuned apparitions. And as well as that, this feat requires a particularly strong bond with a specific apparition, so you choose one that you have access to, and once you learn the feat, you must always have that apparition as one of them every day. And it's very interesting to me that this special goes against the flavor up top, where the Medium doesn't form a deep bond with a single apparition, but then their granted feat forces them to have one that they're always attuned to, but that's neither here nor there. At 9th level, you gain the Dual Invocation, which allows you to build bonds with multiple apparitions. You get to have 2 attuned apparitions as your primary apparitions. And then at level 19 here, Supreme Incarnation, when you get your 10th rank spell slot, you get to choose which of your primary apparitions for the avatar spell, instead of it just being the primary one. Your focus point pool is also equal to the number of focus spells you have, or the number of primary apparitions you're attuned to, whichever is higher. This is something that I don't quite get, because it doesn't give you the ability to attune to a third primary apparition. It's only 2. And you get a second focus point at 7th level, which I suppose they do stack. Now that I'm looking at it again, the third apparition just increases the amount of points. So this is giving you a third focus point at level 9, whereas the Liturgist gets it at level 7. Alrighty. And then at level 17, the Invocation of Synchronization. Whenever you have relinquished control to an apparition, you get some extra benefits, including a free recall knowledge check. All strikes you make with a weapon or unarmed attack deal extra spirit damage. There we go. And you gain resistance equal to half your level against all physical damage, but weakness equal to your level to spirit damage. And so Medium is very interesting in that you get to maintain multiple connections, and you're better at relinquishing control of your body. It seems like both Liturgist and Medium would be particularly effective at utilizing sort of a martial playstyle, using the Witness to Ancient Battles, because Liturgist can sustain it at level 9 while moving, and Medium can gain these additional damage and resistances, as well as bonuses against becoming controlled. The Seer is next up. You're particularly sensitive to the presence and influence of spirits and undead. You can detect lingering spirits and you have defense against them. You gain the Apparition Sense feat, which allows you to detect invisible or hidden spirits, haunts, and undead within 30 feet of you as an imprecise sense. And you can also, as a 10-minute activity, act as a link between disembodied souls and their mortal bodies that allows you to try and return them to their body if the body is still alive. You also gain a status bonus to saving throws and AC against haunts, spirits, and incorporeal undead. At 9th level, you gain the Invocation of Protection, which gives you spirit resistance and void resistance equal to half your level, and then the bonus against haunts and spirits and incorporeal undead increases to +2. And at level 17, the Invocation of Resilience improves your apparition sight to precise sense, and your status bonus to saving throws and AC is a +3 instead. This one is a little more limited. It doesn't interact as much with the mechanics of the class, but it does focus in on very well being resilient against spirits, and I think that that is plenty interesting to do. And then finally there's Shaman, where you form a close bond with your apparition, which allows it to take on a material form in the form of a familiar. You gain a spirit familiar, which chooses one of your attuned apparitions at daily prep to become a spirit. If it's slain or destroyed, you lose all of the benefits from that apparition until you re-manifest it during your next daily preparations. And if you disperse the apparition, which there are some abilities that give you bonus effects if you disperse an apparition. If you disperse the one that you have as a familiar, the familiar is destroyed. At level 2, it also gives you Enhanced Familiar for more familiar abilities. At level 9, you get the Invocation of Growth, which gives you the Incredible Familiar feat. And then at level 17, you get the Invocation of Otherworldliness. Your familiar, as a single action with the Concentrate trait, can become incorporeal for a minute. It remains tethered to you, so it has to stay within 60 feet and must maintain line of effect, so it typically can't pass through walls. But it does make it so that it can move through creatures, and creatures can move through it. It can't make strength-based checks against corporeal creatures, and they can't do this same against it. It's immune to precision damage, resistant to physical, accepting ghost touch equal to half your level, doubled against non-magical damage, but it's weak to force equal to half your level. So that's a good way to have a familiar. Familiars are very versatile. Even if I know for a lot of people they're not the most exciting feature, they can do a lot of things. And especially being able to bring a spirit into the physical world is very interesting. And I want to touch a little bit on the thematics of the Animist first, and some of the stories you can tell in them, and then I'll finally do a little bit of a touch-up on some feats that I found interesting. But if we zoom into Apparition Attunement here real quickly, this first paragraph in particular, which I'll read out right now. Animists have a gift for divine magic that allows them to serve as conduits or bridges for otherworldly spiritual entities known collectively as apparitions. Through them, these entities can commune and interact with the physical world in a process called attunement. Apparitions are myriad and diverse. They may be human spirits lingering on the border between becoming phantoms or ghosts, animal spirits with particularly strong connections to the physical world but lacking the malice that would spur a transition into true undeath, manifestations of natural locations that have grown thought and purpose over time, or they may be a different variation altogether. Some animists attune to one or more specific apparitions that accompany them in their travels, forming deep partnerships over time, while others adapt to their surroundings by befriending the local apparitions who dwell wherever the animist journey takes them. So, to touch on the thematics there, and this is possibly the most interesting part of the class to me. An Animist gets to interface with the world, and especially with a game master who is interested in engaging in that part of the story and is interested in crafting that, or at least cultivating that for you. You can do a lot of interesting things, and this is where I want to bring back up Triumph of the Tusk for a very, very short introduction. It's essentially the orcs have had a long history of being prejudiced against, and the adventure path takes place in opening up their borders, but they've particularly had a lot of issues with dwarves in history, and so during these diplomatic meetings, the thought that I had, and something that I thought would be very, very interesting, would be to play as a dwarven animist, and then your apparition attunement, perhaps as a medium even, with relinquished control. You could have one of your attuned spirits be some dwarven ancestor who could give you lore, and context for the things going on, and could maybe push you towards some old dwarven prejudice. But then the other apparitions that you have access to, and the ones that you would be picking up along the way, rather than having this one continual one, would be various orcs or other inhabitants of the region, or spirits of the forest who can explain to the character, the dwarf, exactly how everything has been going on, how the orcs are, their history, their culture, etc. And it could provide a lot of unique insight into the world and create interesting roleplay between yourself and what for everyone else, say, moving over to Vanguard of Roaring Waters, something as simple as a stream that a party would pass over could be an interesting roleplay opportunity for an animist, if the GM determined, the party rests, the animist wakes up, attunes to the spirits in the morning, and then there's a Vanguard of Roaring Waters there to talk to you about how the orcs have hunted in this region, and maybe they, are very respectful of the land, or things like that. It could create a lot of interesting roleplay opportunities, and it's something that I have a lot of attachment to. I wanted to touch on one thing that I wish that they had provided in the book, alongside this kind of idea that I feel has been prompted by the apparition attunement. And that's, these apparitions are all very open in their theming, in that you could apply basically any sort of story to one of them. Like, for example, that dwarf that I mentioned, the old dwarf that is coming with them, their primary apparition that follows them throughout their journey, could be a crafter in the vault, or could be something like a witness to ancient battles, maybe directly fought against the orcs, etc. Could even be something like a steward of stone and fire, maybe had some connection to the earth that was particularly deep, etc. There's a lot of options here, echoes of lost moments. But what there isn't any sort of guidance for, and what I think I'm going to end up doing, but wish that they had provided something for, was guidance on not even necessarily creating your own spirit, but just modifying an apparition a little bit to be fitting to the spirit that it's embodying. So maybe, for example, a witness to ancient battles, a dwarf who I've brought with me, who instead of Battlegrounds lore is providing dwarf lore, or maybe even lore specific to some of the battles that took place during the Quest for Sky, which is when the dwarves and orcs fought, etc. Just something as simple as that. And of course, you can always come up with your own apparitions depending on the stories that you're looking to tell. And I don't think it's necessarily even that difficult to ask your GM to substitute an apparition skill, say strike out the fortune-telling lore and switch it in for dwarf lore because it's a dwarven spirit. I think these are reasonable asks, but it would have been nice to have a little bit of inclusion of the game master in these rules, or at least some guidance for them to be involved. Either way, though, I think it's a massive, it massively succeeds at what it's trying to do, and I am very excited when I read these options, both for roleplay and mechanically. I think that the variety on show is very deep. Now, I want to close out with a few feats that I found particularly exciting, and then a quick wrap-up and summary. Here are a few lower-level feats for Animist that I think can greatly change your experience, or are just kind of interesting showcases of how Animist functions differently. We have Embodiment of the Balance. This just adds both heal and harm to your Apparition spell repertoire, which then allows you to cast them out of all of your spontaneous spell slots. That's very potent, particularly when you can already prepare heal into your normal spell slots. Grasping Spirits spell is a spell shape twist on Reach spell. If the next action you use is to cast a spell with a range that has a range and targets one creature, you get to increase the range by 30 feet. So that's normal for Reach spell, although having to target a creature for it is different. And then, in addition to the normal effects of the spell, your apparitions briefly take on semi-physical forms and attempt to drag the target towards you. They need to make a fortitude save against your spell DC, and on a failure, they're pulled up to 30 feet directly toward you. You get to do this once every 10 minutes. That's very interesting to me, and particularly as a caster, pulling enemies towards me isn't something that I would immediately jump to in my mind, so I find it interesting that having this at level 2 is maybe here to indicate sort of to the players that because you have this medium armor, 8 hit points, and various features that do function very well in melee combat, whether it's some of the later liturgist or medium feats, or even just the vessel spells of some of the apparitions. It's just an interesting thing to think about, that you might not necessarily want to be a backline caster as a animist. And then Spiritual Expansion spell. This is another spell shape. It's a twist on Widen spell. If the next action you use is to cast a spell that has an area of a burst cone or line that doesn't have a duration, increase the area of the spell, as normal for Widen spell. But you can also use it to increase the radius of an emanation spell with a duration by 5 feet by dedicating your primary apparition to maintaining the spell shape. And then that apparition is you can't use it while the modified spell is going on, which means you lose access to its vessel spell if it was your primary. Oh yeah, it is your primary. You lose access to your vessel spell, your apparition skills, and your avatar form, but you do not lose access to the apparition spells themselves, just the vessel spell and skills. Very, very interesting to me. Being able to toss down a larger illusory object and losing your apparition for a while is very interesting. Although the only thing that I will note is that there being no guidance on being able to return your apparition to you at some later point, because if I pull up here illusory object, it has a reasonably low rank heighten, at 5th rank here, with an unlimited duration. And as far as is written here, that would cause you to lose your apparition. Although it might be easy enough to say that maybe you can dispel the effect, or you just get it back during your daily preparations when you change or re-prepare your apparitions. Over here I wanted to go into a small feat chain. This is about the sort of different shape spells that you have access to. Devouring Dark form for Lurker in Devouring Dark, which allows you to become a waterbound creature, or Stalker in Darkened Boughs, Darkened Forest form, which allows you to essentially wild shape, sort of, or Untamed form, I should say, where you gain Pest rank, or Pest form, and then Animal form, and then Elemental form. These series of feats allow you to add various forms to these features. So, for example, Walk the Wilds adds animal form to your apparition spell repertoire, so you can just cast it as a spell normally. But you can also add it to the Darkened Forest form feature, allowing that animal form to go up to 5 minutes instead of 1. Wind Seeker at level 8, which does a similar thing with aerial form and adds the bat and bird forms to the Darkened Boughs form. And then Monstrous Inclinations, which does the same thing for Monstrosity form, and allows you to add Phoenix form to Stalker in Darkened Boughs, and then Caveworm and Sea Serpent to Devouring Dark. Something else I wanted to touch on real quick as well, as I place this here, and these two have in common, so sort of a segue over, the Wandering trait here. This is a very interesting trait. The Wandering feats require you to have a certain apparition attuned to you. So, for example, Shadows Within Shadows here requires you to be attuned to an apparition that has either hunting lore or underworld lore. And you are able to retrain the Wandering feats, any of them that you have, every time you make your daily preparations. So you get to reselect all of your Wandering feats when you reselect your apparitions. And that also provides a lot of versatility in what you're able to do. And it means that you can adapt to situations quite a lot. But Shadows Within Shadows here is the last feat that I want to show off. It's a reaction when you would be either detected by an enemy seeking you, or an enemy would succeed at a counteract check against a spell that is making you hidden, concealed, or undetected. You make them re-roll it and take the lower results. And there's no limitation on how many times you can use this. It is level 12, but it means that you'll be very, very effective at staying hidden, and particularly outside of combat when things like this are a little more spread out, and you'll probably have your reaction every time something seeks. It's very interesting. I like it a lot. Alrighty, so now for the kind of overview, summary, wrap-up, whatever you want to call it. I think that Animist has a lot of versatility, a lot to offer. You're able to switch out multiple granted spell lists every day. You're able to cast them out of all of your apparition spell slots. You get to switch out various somewhat scaling lore feats every day, even though they'll be behind something that you're actually training up yourself. They will be keeping up and being highly effective skills. You have access to all these vessel spells that have a whole variety of things they're capable of doing, which is very interesting. The ability to retrain your Wandering feats as well. You can absolutely go in as an Animist, and particularly with GM help, create an Animist who is adapting to situations constantly, by picking up local spirits, but even without GM help, if you were, say, you have Crafter in the Vault and Echo of Lost Moments, you're in a settlement, but you head out into the wilderness and your party needs someone who's capable of hunting for food, you can switch over to Stalker and Darkened Boughs and start taking advantage of that hunting lore, using the spirits to guide you, or even things like mountain lore or river lore to help you with whatever situation you find yourself in. It's going to be kind of hard to find yourself caught out as an animist, but it's more because you're very effective at adapting to the spirits of the world as you go. You can tell a lot of stories with an animist about adapting to spirits as you go, or having spirits that come with you. Maybe you pick up spirits, you help them along their path, and then you release them again, etc. There's a lot of flavor even in the subclasses, which I'm a big fan of. And I think Animist is gonna fall pretty solidly into a class that I'm going to enjoy the power level of as well. Although I am still very confused by the Animist spells per day. If anyone does know why there's this jump at 10th rank, and because I'm just speculating that it's for balance reasons, but as far as I could tell within the book, there is no actual reasoning provided as to why there is this jump at level 10. But I think that Animist is going to be a great addition to the classes of Pathfinder 2nd edition. I had a lot of fun reading this. I had a lot of fun putting everything together. I'm going to do a quick pan over of all of the features so that if anyone wants to read something themselves, I'll turn off the red overlay that I've been using as well. You can go ahead and do so. Read yourself, that is. But yeah, I had a lot of fun reading this book. I think there's a lot of amazing stuff in it. And I think that it's probably one of the more exciting things that has released recently for me. I'm looking forward to, over the next couple of days, I'm going to be previewing some of the other divine class archetypes. I don't think I'm going to be covering the exemplar myself, but I do want to go into the mythic rules because there's a lot of interesting stuff there that I think is applicable to GMs of all types, and even players as well. There's a lot of very interesting stories that I think can be told using the mythic system, and I think that even just applying it to creatures in a normal campaign can do a lot for making them very strong, final battles. I've done my series on how to make interesting boss fights, and I think that it's an excellent supplement to handle that differently, or even combine it together. But that's everything for Animist for me today. Thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see more, drop me a few bucks on Coffee if you want to keep the channel running, and I will see you all next time. See ya. See ya.